Welcome back, everyone. This is your host, John Gentry, for Explore Traveler podcast. And today, I think I'm going to kind of piggyback off of a very popular podcast, which was about traveling around the airports in 2021. And I think I want to switch it over to traveling the kind of the remote highways of the Southwest in 2021. This year, it's not without its challenges. Last year was definitely challenging for a lot of people, myself included. But I think we've learned to adapt and overcome a lot of the, I don't know, maybe it's harassment to a certain extent, right? So, we're all about traveling. We're all about going places. And I have been flying this year, but I've done a lot of driving. So because of the international chaos that is ensuing around the world due to people shutting down, basically I've been driving a lot more. And so I've been spending most of this year between the southwest of the United States and Alaska. But I've been doing a lot of driving in the Southwest, and I go, all the way from sometimes from El Paso, all the way up to the border of Colorado and Mexico, sometimes over to the border of Arizona. So I kind of drive around the Southwest, as you can see from a lot of the articles and the videos that I've been writing. I'm kind of looking for archaeology sites, things that are of interest. A lot of the places that I normally would go to, they're just not open. They're on Indian reservations, and these reservations, basically, they're not accepting any visitors, due to the COVID outbreak. So I go to state parks and national parks, mostly national parks. Some of the state parks at least in New Mexico, have been temporarily shut down last year. They have been open this year, and I have been going to a few of them. But I've been pretty much doing national forests, national monuments, national parks. And so I figured I'd just kind of maybe give you my observations of driving the roads of the Southwest United States in 2021. So let's just start with one of the areas that I drive out of, which is Albuquerque, New Mexico. I go out of Santa Fe, New Mexico a lot. I go to Roswell, New Mexico. I've been over in Texas and the Panhandle and further south. So those have kind of been some of my main areas that I've gone out of. And driving all these roads, I notice an interesting difference between different places. For example, Santa Fe and the areas around Santa Fe, they still have, I guess you call it mask mandates, to go into certain businesses. They put signs up. Now, a lot of those businesses are because those roads go through the reservations, and they still require you to wear a mask when you go into their gas stations and things like that. And so there is some of that going on. But I'm also going, I'll be driving, say, I don't know, outside of Santa Fe, and a gas station will just be shut down, out of the blue. It was never, usually shut down. I'll drive all the way up, north of Taos, New Mexico, and there'll be this mom and pop restaurant, only one within 30 miles, maybe. And the owner, she's just there, she's doing everything. I asked her about, COVID and things like that. And she's like, yeah, we probably had it in here, but, we caught it, we recovered, and we kept moving forward. So it just kind of depends on the area at which you go in. There's a lot of older people up in that area, so I was a little surprised. I guess they kind of were very casual about it. They definitely were not worried about it at all. And the same thing goes for, areas when I drive through Roswell, because I go through Roswell a lot. They basically ignore the governor, to be honest. They've just kept going. They did, I mean, they've had COVID go through Roswell quite a bit, but they haven't had too many deaths. And I guess they consider themselves, what would you call it? I know they like to, they use the term herd immunity, but I don't like using the term herd when it comes to humans because it kind of makes us sound like, cows. And we eat cows, so I don't like the term herd immunity. But there's just different attitudes. And you go to the coffee shops here in, around the area of Albuquerque, for example, and all of the young ladies in college age, they pretty much flocked to the coffee shops when everybody was like collecting unemployment. So they went and took those jobs right away. So they were very smart. So they're getting good tip paying jobs. I mean, I know I'm pretty generous with the tips when I go get my coffee. And there's a lot of people like myself that do it too. So it's nice. And the roads have been better in some areas and worse in others. New Mexico does not do a very good job on the roads. Texas does a very good job. Arizona seems to be pretty good. Southern Colorado, as far as I can tell so far, it seems pretty good. There's just something going on in New Mexico. It's kind of it's almost a one party political system in New Mexico, and who knows what they're doing with the money, It's not going to the roads, I'll tell you that. Um, During COVID last year would have been a great time to do the roads because, no one would have been on them, but that would be too logical. So they didn't do that. As far as, driving through Texas, Texas is very open. Um, People do catch COVID in Texas, obviously, it's no different than anywhere else. They just sort of people just like, they'll catch it, you'll see them, and then they disappear for 10 to 14 days, and then all of a sudden they pop back up again. And so that's kind of how you know someone in Texas has COVID. They just sort of disappear for 2 weeks. And in New Mexico, I feel like there's a little more drama when I drive around the state, and within Albuquerque and Santa Fe in particular. But if I drive like south of Albuquerque and I go down, say, around Lincoln National Forest and the towns around there, you wouldn't even think there was any kind of a pandemic or government regulated on anything. People just ignore the governor. So from far as I can tell, most of the COVID related traveling issues are either on Indian reservations, definitely in Santa Fe as the capital. That's where they enforce things the most. I think they can't enforce much outside of Santa Fe and to a certain extent Albuquerque. And then, when you start getting into these smaller towns, the county sheriffs, they don't enforce most of the government's regulations, even though they're all in the same party technically, because it's kind of the Democrat Party sort of rules the state. But they just don't, people don't want anything to do with it. And even though there might be considered somewhat liberal in New Mexico, the Democrat Party outside of, Santa Fe, it's pretty conservative. They're I would call them like old school Democrats, family people. And, the political atmosphere is honestly pretty positive. A lot of the nonsense that you hear about and you see on TV, I haven't been seeing it outside of the cities. People are just being people. They're going to work, driving home. I think drivers are a little more aggressive on the roads down here in the Southwest. But other than that, it's been pretty good. I haven't had too many close calls. I've enjoyed visiting a lot of the smaller towns, just because of the freedom that brings it. Everybody's been warm and welcome. I'm actually, as we're talking right now, I'm up north on the border of New Mexico and Colorado, just camping out, and people are friendly. People, I see couples out here. I see young people, just kind of getting together around the campfire, enjoying each other's company. A few kids here and there. everybody's just sort of enjoying themselves. And so I think the national park system took a huge upswing in people using it. I mean, I know there's people that may have lost their jobs and no fault of their own, and they're probably living in some of these places, but it's not so obvious as far as I can tell. Um, and anyway, it's not free, so pretty much any place that costs a couple bucks, I've noticed that it's much safer and there's a lot less nonsense. It's amazing the difference that 10, 20 bucks makes. Um, People prefer free. So they'll go to BLM land and just sort of, camp out in the middle of nowhere. And hopefully they don't start forest fires, but I'm sure it happens from time to time. And so basically that's kind of my take driving around. You get out of the cities, people are warm, friendly, even in the cities for the most part. All the anxiousness that I think existed in 2020, for the most part, has sort of died down. I mean, they're trying to do the fear mongering on TV and maybe on the radio to a certain extent, but I don't think anybody's really paying attention to it. Um, in the state of New Mexico, they did issue a mask mandate just recently, and I think for the most part, people go into a grocery store, they put it on. Most people at work already have to do it anyway, so it didn't really change much. I mean, there's probably people that refuse to wear it at all. Um, I mean, I have a common sense approach to it myself. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if a business wants you to wear a mask, I wear a mask. I respect their establishment. It's not about whether I agree or disagree. It's just kind of like no shoes, no shirt, no service. And if I don't like it, I can always go somewhere else. So there are stores that they don't have mask mandates no matter what the governor says. And sometimes I go there. And sometimes I go to Albertsons and I put on my mask. So it's sometimes it's an inconvenience. But don't, if you're traveling around a lot, don't wear those medical masks. They're so uncomfortable. You can't breathe in them. I think they're probably dangerous to be wearing and driving. So find you a comfortable mask that you can breathe in. Don't sit there and think that COVID's not going to get through that mask, because it will. COVID is very small. It's much smaller than any of the pores on any of these masks. But what the masks do is, if someone coughs or sneezes, it does prevent the distance at which a virus can escape, right? So in that sense, it does work. As far as you being too close to somebody and breathing in COVID, no, the mask is not going to stop it, and don't expect it to, right? That's why they talk about social distancing. That's kind of where it comes from. So that's kind of what's been going on. Attitudes are different down south versus further up north. They don't seem to care at all going down south. And then there's pockets around Albuquerque, for example, little small towns like Rio Rancho and stuff like that. They're not really, they don't seem to like it too much. They ignore some of the governor's orders. I don't think she's having the same amount of effect in 2021 as she did in 2020, because she was pushing the concept of a vaccine. And I think people, when you hear the word vaccine, you assume that, wow, I'm being vaccinated against a disease like chickenpox or, measles or something like that. But I think that the term has probably been misused, and the shots act more like a flu shot. And as you know, the flu shot's offered every year, because the version that's in the flu shot is slightly tweaked every year. And the idea behind it is, every year you got this protection from this version of the flu, and then the next year you get a protection from another version of the flu, and then maybe after 5 years you got kind of a broad spectrum of protection. That's kind of the idea. That's the way I understand it. And I actually think that's the where things are going with these COVID shots. And I wish they had kind of explained that a little better to people. because there are people who need it, and there are people that might not need it because they already had COVID, so they have natural immunity, and that needs to be addressed as well. And so that's kind of, my take is traveling around during this time period. I'm kind of taking a middle ground approach. I do pay attention to what's going on. I am not naive to think that this disease is not dangerous for some people. And I'm fortunate enough to have not been impacted by it. But there are those that I love that have been, and it was kind of close call for them. So it's a serious thing, and I think you should take it serious, and everyone should evaluate, how they decide on what they are or are not going to do. Personally, I will continue traveling regardless. I don't care how many times it mutates. I'm going to keep going, right? So I'm going to push forward. I'm going to keep making new videos. I'm going to find some cool place to go to. I'm going to go travel around Carson National Forest the next couple days, and probably end up back at Bandelier to try to get my article for Bandelier finished. So I'm not going to stop. And so I'll keep bringing you the news and views of the road and the different areas, especially, even Alaska. I got an article from Alaska coming out soon. There's just a lot of really cool stuff that you can do, and you don't have to worry about some of these traveling things, right? So get out and drive, right? You got a car. Sure, gas prices are going up, but you know what? That's just the way it is. It's still cheaper than taking an airplane for the most part. And even if you take an airplane, you're going to wear a mask in the airport the whole day. It's doable. It's a little uncomfortable, but you can do it. And you can get to your destination. So that's okay as well. Let's see. What else? Food. Food in the Southwest is amazing. Restaurants that did not close, that they kept, they kind of, I don't want to say they ignored the situation, because they didn't. I mean, I would say most of them in the kitchen are wearing masks and things like that. Sometimes the waitresses are wearing masks, sometimes they're not. I know they're supposed to, but I think a lot of places, they don't want to, they're tired of it. I think there's a little bit of burnout. And so they're just they went back to normal at the end of last year. And now we're getting towards the end of 2021. And I don't think a lot of people are going to have it. They're just not going to put up with it anymore. Unless it were to get super, super bad, right? And then it's obvious, and then the whole economy would just shut down even worse than it did before. But I don't think that's going to happen this year and this winter. I think people are going to there's going to be a big push for a booster shot on these COVID shots. And then there's going to be a push to, wear masks in, I don't want to say indoor public areas. Outdoors, no one's going to have it. And I think it's unhealthy to be wearing it outdoors anyway, especially if you're exercising. Every once in a while, I'll see somebody, I'm on a hiking trail, they're literally by themselves, and they're wearing a mask hiking on the wilderness. I don't understand that. But for me personally, if I'm outside, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to enjoy the fresh air. I'm going to get my exercise, keep my immune system strong. Am I watching some of the food I'm eating? Yes. Am I taking my vitamins and boosting my immune system? Absolutely. Am I, trying to help others that might be more susceptible to that, be a little more isolated than myself? Yes, right. So you got to use common sense, and there's no one size fits all. So I don't think people should take it that way. So I think that's it for now. So get out and drive, explore, take a look at the website. We got a new design, and kind of the search function is very visible. You can type in the first search function and look on the top there. We got destination tabs, so you click on destination, all the different categories, and most of the articles are categorized by destination now. And we're going to be adding to that and approving that over time. So, you can go in there and click on the United States, and basically you're going to see all these latest articles that I've been doing in national parks and stuff like that. So take a look, and I hope you enjoy the new design. And until next time, travel on, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of the year in 2021.